Hello, I'm Ibrahim Imam and welcome to this episode of the Neurology Lounge podcast. I will be discussing the beguiling manifestations of epileptic seizures in this short episode. The public perception of epilepsy is often confined to what used to be called the grand mal convulsion. This is the classical epileptic event in which the person suddenly falls to the ground after emitting a noise, goes totally rigid, and then shakes violently for a few minutes. Everybody also seems to know that this event may be associated with tongue biting, foaming at the mouth, and loss of urinary or fecal continence. The person then goes into a deep sleep or drowsiness, coming round appearing very confused and disorientated. This often happens when the person is already in the back of a rickety car or a posh ambulance, depending on where he or she is, on the road to the nearest emergency department. It is not the fault of the large majority of the public that they consider the grand mal to be the only manifestation of epileptic attacks. It is, after all, a very dramatic event, and many have actually witnessed such a convulsion in real life, leaving them very traumatized. The grand mal actually captures adequately what this breathtaking event is, but it is now more accurately called a generalized tonic-clonic convulsion, possibly renamed by some wise neurologists who are not so keen on the dramatic. But by whatever name it is called, grand mal or GTC, this episode leaves no one in doubt that something serious is afoot. It is its own red flag, an early warning sign occasionally of serious diseases such as brain tumors or stroke, meningitis or brain injury, but to be fair, in most cases there's no underlying cause. In such conditions, the neurologist calls them idiopathic to hide their ignorance. There's another presentation of epileptic seizures that is likely to seep into the knowledge of the general public. And this is when the person goes blank or vacant, and this may be just for a few seconds, and the person then comes round without any hint that anything was amiss. This used to be called petit mal, but there's nothing petit about it at all. Because it is also an indication of serious problems, neurologists have renamed it the absence seizure. Both grand and petit mal seizures are forms of generalized epilepsy, and this is epilepsy in which the whole brain is involved and in which consciousness or awareness is impaired. Beside these, however, there is a major category of seizures called focal or partial seizures. These involve just a focal or partial part of the brain and therefore not usually associated with altered awareness. It is therefore not surprising that a focal or partial seizure, which is neither dramatic nor concerning, can go undetected for a very long time. And there are hundreds of these types of seizures. These are the elusive symptoms that are really epileptic seizures in disguise. And in this podcast, I will count down or count up the 10 categories of these sneaky seizures. Number 1 are the verbal manifestations, and these include crying, called diachristic seizures, laughing, called gyrating seizures, foul speech or coprolalia, jargon speech, singing, humming and whistling, the musical dimension, as well as swearing, hushing, and even barking like a dog. Number 2 are the hand manifestations, and these include making a fist, pointing, and waving. It may include cupping the hand or making a pincer posture. It may also include extending the hand or snapping the fingers, and believe you me, clipping the nails. Number 3 are the body postures and movements that may manifest as seizures. And these include assuming a fencer's position, head nodding, nose wiping, running, also called cursive seizures, dancing, gyrating, leaving the bed, or even undressing. Other rarer ones are body turning, making pedaling movements, and, believe you me, belly dancing. Number 4 are the autonomic and systemic manifestations of seizures. And these include nausea or vomiting occurring just on their own, belching, also called eructation, flatulence, the urge to defecate, urinary urgency, isolated bedwetting, and erections and even orgasm. And number 5 are the cardiorespiratory manifestations of seizures, and these include a slow or a fast heart rate. These are respectively called bradycardia and tachycardia, and this can manifest as palpitations. Seizures may also manifest with various heart rhythm abnormalities, with excessive breathing called hyperventilation, or even the absence of breathing called apnea. And a cough may also be a manifestation of a seizure. Number 6 are the eye manifestations, and these include blindness, eye blinking, this may only be on one side, drooping of the eyelid, also called ptosis, excessive tearing called lacrimation, as well as a small pupil called miosis. And we come to number 7, and this is when seizures mimic oral movements. These include lip smacking, smiling, spitting, kissing, water drinking, pouting, also called the chapeau de gendarme sign, pardon my French again, yawning, and teeth grinding, also called bruxism. And number 8 are the emotional and cognitive manifestations of focal seizures. And these include déjà vu, or an excessive sense of familiarity, jamais vu, or a sense of unfamiliarity, forced thinking, anger, rage, and aggression, screaming and showing fear, as well as happiness and ecstasy. And to top it off, there may be an out-of-body experience. And we come to number 9, which is a curious one, as it involves religious manifestations. And these include praying, asking God for help, and asking for forgiveness. It may also manifest as religious speech and reciting religious phrases, making the sign of the cross called signum crucis, as well as raising the index finger called the Shahada movement. And finally, to round up our countdown, we are at number 10 with psychiatric manifestations. These include hallucinations and illusions. It can include panic attacks, catastrophic depression, catatonia, delusion of sexual transformation, depersonalization, derealization, impulsivity, and, wait for it, an attraction to television, also called the telephilic syndrome. Having gone through these symptoms, it is important to understand that most of these seizure manifestations are very rare, and the first consideration often should not be a seizure. It is usually when they occur repeatedly without any other identifiable cause that it becomes entirely reasonable to consider if these are indeed focal seizures. If you found this podcast enlightening or even perplexing, do leave a comment or at least click on the like button. And if you want to learn a bit more about the bizarre bits of neurology, why not read my book called Surfing the Brain? And if you want a bit more about the nitty-gritty, consider my checklist website called Neuro Checklist. And to make sure you do not miss the next episode of the podcast, why not subscribe to the YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify channels? But until then, thank you very much for your attention.